So, with spring practices beginning or set to begin across the nation, this is an incredibly important time for a lot of these institutions. A time in which they get an understanding in areas they need to work on and get a glimpse into what their teams could be during the 2022 season. But the spring is more important for some institutions than others. And an institution such as the Oklahoma Sooners, that not only lost a ton of talent, but bring in a new coaching staff, the spring offers a lot of opportunities, and we need to break it down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Y for yes, N for no. Are you excited for the Oklahoma Sooners to start their spring practices? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. I'm on my push to 15,000 subscribers, and I would love to have you along. If you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself in getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's hop right into this. And there's several different areas in which we could start and really peer into. But as is tradition with me, y'all know me, I love the offensive line. I think everything starts with the offensive line. And if we are going to be talking about the importance of spring, we better start in the most important areas. So we are beginning today looking into the Oklahoma situation in the trenches. Because look, Oklahoma's in a situation where last year their offensive line play was a bit inconsistent. However, they finished the year pretty strong compared to how they started the year. And one thing I always talk about is it's not about how you start the season. You always want to start great. But it's about how you finish the season. Because if you had a rocky start to your season, you might get 7 games in and there's nothing you can do to change what started that season. However, the only thing you have left in your control is to get better every single week. And if that happens, then that's progress. And that's what we're looking for in college football, is progress. You do not want stagnation, as stagnation is the enemy of progression, and as long as you can continue moving forward, you're at least going somewhere. So now we fast forward into a situation where Oklahoma now has a new offensive coordinator, and they're replacing pieces on this offensive line in Marquise Hayes and Tyrese Robinson. Now, luckily for the Sooners, Bill Bedenbaugh stays. He's someone who I can imagine multiple institutions probably tried to reach out to. I can imagine Lincoln Riley probably tried to take him. Now, important to note, I have no information on either of those. That's why I said I can imagine with both. Purely my opinion there. But Bill Bedenbaugh is one of the most notable offensive line coaches in the nation. And if you are sitting there having to replace 2 guys on your offensive line, which Oklahoma had to replace an incredibly important piece off their offensive line a year ago this time in Creed Humphrey, so certainly no stranger to having to replace talented pieces on the front unit. But the point remains, if you're going to have to replace pieces and you're going to be bringing in a new offensive coordinator, the fact that you can keep Bill Bedenbaugh was a major win for the Sooners. But the offensive line is an area that I'm going to be particularly interested in. And there are some people who could tell me, but Ty, one of the most intriguing things for the Sooners this spring is going to be the quarterback situation, and I'm certainly not going to disagree because of the nature of college football. You're certainly not wrong. The quarterback gets the lion's share of attention because they touch the ball all the time. What I would offer you is this. I'm a little bit less worried about the quarterback situation because of the prior relationship Dylan Gabriel has with Jeff Lebby. So their ability to connect with one another and hit the ground running is going to be exponentially higher than those that do not have that established prior relationship. And it's because of that I'm not as concerned about the quarterback situation for the Oklahoma Sooners. Do I think that they're going to be trying to get the younger guys really brought up, such as a Nick Evers? Absolutely. I'm not at all dismissing that. But my main point here is the quarterback situation is of little importance if your offensive line isn't where you want it to be. Now, luckily, Oklahoma did do good work in recruiting, but especially in the transfer portal and being able to identify guys that can fill in these pieces. Because McCade Mature is someone who was very successful in the Pac-12, who's had a lot of experience, and now you get a blend of experience and talent, someone who's proven that they can make that transition from high school to college, and now you get him in. I think Mature is going to be a big piece to this offensive line competition, a name we need to remember. Now, that doesn't mean anything is guaranteed or that he's going to be handed a job. He certainly won't. but it's the fact that you do have someone with that experience that can help this competition out. The very fact that he has that experience is going to push others, whether they know it or not. So I think that's an incredibly positive thing. But for simplicity's sake, let's say Machira is one of those positions. Well, now you're sitting in a situation where you still have one position available. You have talent that's been on roster. It's just about who are the 5 going to be? What is this offensive line going to look like? There's been some competition last season at the center position between Rame and Congo, and now all of these things get to be hashed out, and it's incredibly important that it does because you're having a new offensive system, an offensive system that we've already heard high reviews of out of Norman. Now, that being said, we have heard that it's a complicated offensive system, which is why ultimately I wanted to start in the trenches. Because we can talk about Dillon Gabriel and how this is a complicated offensive system, but as I already said, this is an offensive system that he already flourished in at UCF under Jeff Lebby. So I have no reason to expect that he won't do the same at Oklahoma, especially when you look at the weapons they're going to be able to put around him. And if you're thinking, okay, well, what about the receiver position? We do lose some talent there. You're not wrong. But the fact that you're able to keep Marvin Mims and Theo Weiss makes me not as concerned about what that room has to offer. I think you got in some guys through recruiting as well that are going to be able to make splashes. I really don't have a whole lot of concern for Oklahoma's wide receiver room because the best receiver they had remains in Marvin Mims, and I'm very high on Theo Weiss's upside. So I really like their situation there. That's why when I'm looking at this, and today we're starting with the offense, we'll be talking about the defense a bit later, but that's why I started with the offensive line when talking about the Oklahoma Sooners in relation to spring practices, is because there's different areas of the team we could talk about. But first and foremost, if the offensive line isn't giving the quarterback and subsequently the offense time to develop, those other competitions are going to be less important than they should be. And second off, there are areas in those other competitions that I believe will ease Oklahoma fans' nerves, whether that be the presence of Eric Gray, Marcus Majors, plus 2 talented running backs out of the recruiting class, whether that's the presence of Marvin Mims, whether that's Dillon Gabriel already having an understanding of Jeff Lebby's system. There are different storylines that we can point to across Oklahoma that will ease the nerves of fans. Yet the offensive line is where we must start when we're talking about importance. Bill Biedenbaugh's got his work cut out for him, with having to replace multiple individuals on the offensive line with a new offensive system, but he's one of the better and more notable offensive line coaches in the nation, so if anybody can do it, you're really hoping it's him. But I'm very interested in hearing from you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking about this, and let me know who you're excited to see make pushes for that offensive line. That's it. See ya.